This is a presentation of the School of Criminal Justice and Law Enforcement at California Southern University.
Community-oriented policing. I like the response, satisfactory. Who made that comment? Charlie, was that you? One of the chiefs made a comment that says, well, yeah, we've satisfactorily done it, but we need to do more. Gina?
Thank you. I think as every chief up here said, there is room for improvement in this area. We've come a long way, no doubt about it. We now have our police officers who have engaged in the communities, and they've remained in their beat areas for years and years and years, and they know everybody. They know the kid from the time he went to school, where his grandmother lives, where his mom lives, his dads, uncles, all that stuff, who went to jail for what. They know all of that stuff, and that's great. That's community, that's knowing your community. But the difference is knowing your community and all the details about your community is different than having a relationship. So it's because the relationship means that you're more ingrained than just knowing about it. You're more involved with providing resources, giving some perspective to some other family members, maybe the uncle who's drunk all the time being around the kids or something like that. It's getting more engaged. It's more of a relationship. So I think the next step in community-oriented policing is to actually get involved with our people to the point where we are the mentors of society in a lot of ways, and I think that we need to start imparting some of that. We have very young parents out there who don't know, the right way to behave in front of some of their kids sometimes. The cursing can stop in front of the kids. Having regular schedules, doing homework, those kind of things, like putting them on a disciplined kind of a schedule is actually beneficial for their own kids. That's a relationship with a parent. And so it gets to that next level. And so in our department, we actually started a whole division called Community Relationship Division instead of Community Relations Office. And so we've changed it, it's expanded, and that's the point of that whole office, is to get more ingrained and be more resource as well as advisors and guide givers and things like that for the community. So to me, that's our next step.
To continue with what was mentioned about relationships with the community, that a level that we've arrived at with the Sheriff's Department just in the last couple of years, and Chief Barton's mentioned this, that we created a number of councils. One is a diversity council that ranges from all different types of ethnicities to different faiths. As we have an interfaith council, we have an LGBTQ partnership, and we saw this come together in a really interesting way just last month. So myself and about 4 or 5 members of the Orange County Sheriff's Department, as well as police officers from the Irvine Police Department, we were invited to a very large church picnic in Irvine. It's a predominantly African-American church. And every year they have an annual picnic, and they invited us to that. And we went there and we participated in their picnic, and we played in a softball game with them. And it was just it was an excellent way for us to get out and just kind of do something fun and do life with the members of this church, and just have a good time outside of the context of law enforcement. And we're seeing very similar situations arise where we can get out and we can engage with these prominent members of the community, groups that already exist. We don't have to go and create the group. We just go and interact with them. And every single one of them want to sit down with us and want to get to know us. And what we're seeing is these relationships are being fortified in times that are not real dynamic, that are in times when we haven't had a high-profile event. So when that high-profile event comes, and it will, we will have relationships in place. And we're seeing great success. And what we're realizing is the members of those groups are learning that they have a bunch of things in common with us. And what we're seeing is our line officers and our staff are realizing that we have a lot in common with those members of the community. And we have the capability of engaging in conversation much more effectively, much more efficiently.
I'm going to have to agree that I think community-oriented policing does have some room to grow. However, I am going to throw myself out there and say I think it's been pretty successful. If I went to any officer out there sitting here today, they'd probably be able to give me a heck of a definition of it. They'd be able to give me examples of how they partnered with the community to solve problems. I think it's taught in the academy and a field training officer program. It's in most departments evaluations, so officers are evaluated on it annually. Where I think we're struggling a little is sentiment has moved against law enforcement nationally in a number of high publicized situations where we're seeing a little pushback and we're seeing the tides turn a little. And I think the work we can do on better community policing is we have to adapt to our environment and we have to change with it. And I'm actually seeing that now too. If you go on any social media, a year ago you were just seeing a lot of hatred towards people in our profession. Well, now you're seeing a little pushback. We have Behind the Badge, a number of other groups, Police Lives Matter. I'm surprised we even have to have an organization that states that, but we do. And I think we just need to catch up to that tide, shuffle it in with the title of community policing, and catch up to that bar.
So in order to partner with the public, we need to be involved and we need to be visible. And some of the ways that Fullerton is currently accomplishing that mission is we are investing in our youth, much like many of the chiefs spoke about, is making that investment early and then following through with that investment. We have many of our officers who are partnered with different nonprofits. Locally, we have OC United, we have Love Fullerton. That was a citywide effort to beautify our city. Our chief had incredible vision and forethought about 2 years ago, and he created this event in order to have our department work in conjunction with members of the community to better our community. So the first year we had about 1,200 people. This year I'm proud to say that we had almost 3,200 people that showed up to volunteer their time to work in conjunction with officers from our agency to make our community a better place to be. We have partnered with several nonprofits. One of the chiefs mentioned the availability of services to reach your community. Fullerton is one of the cities in the county that has recently partnered with Orange County Mental Health. And we have a clinician ride with us 6 of the 7 days a week in order to provide immediate on-site crisis intervention for those that are suffering. In addition to that, we have many just truly amazing nonprofits. We have the Coast to Coast Foundation, which helps us rehome our homeless populations. We have long-term placement solutions with Coast to Coast. We have, again, I mentioned Love Fullerton, we have Team Kids, and we have many, many other wonderful organizations that help us get out, be visible, and be invested with our community. It's 3 times.
Already, okay.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. I just want to touch real briefly. I appreciate Chief Yokoyama saying that we've just barely scratched the surface or that we're satisfactory, because that really is. I was recently at a training that involved many of my peers at a national level, and the question was posed, how do we engage the community more? And after some getting together, they came up and presented a presentation on community engagement, and it started with them saying, we need to bring the community to our station, we need to educate them on what we can do and why we can't do some of the things they want us to do. I nearly fell out of my chair as I was listening to this, and it took all of my restraint not to just engage immediately as they were saying it. And I think that's where part of the problem lies on a national level with law enforcement, is that we are very quick to equate community-oriented policing with educating the community. And my challenge to my folks is that how often do we let the community educate us on what our needs are? And we miss many opportunities to listen instead of doing the talking. And it goes right into the partnerships that we talk about. We say that we have partnerships, but partnerships include trust. And most of our partnerships is the community coming to us to solve their problems. So that trust has to go both ways. And if we're not allowing them to take the initiative to solve their problems and being a partner at the table, then our paradigm is really off. And the last thing I challenge the officers that I talk with and I work with and I challenge myself is one of the core values that law enforcement holds is that of integrity. We hear that all the time, and I think we sell ourselves short when we talk about integrity. And the common answer you hear for what integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's looking. But if you think about the root word of integrity is integrate, and how many of us are the same person at work that we are at home versus when we're at church versus when we're wherever we go. And I think too much of law enforcement isolates or silos themselves in a place where they're a certain person at work and then there's somebody else elsewhere. And I think the trust needs to be built by integrating and having enough trust and integrity to bring those core concepts together and let them see the whole person standing in front of them.
Like much of my peers, what I wanted to focus a little bit is, I think as chiefs and command paladins, we all know what community policing is, and to the extent that a lot of our good officers are doing good work, they understand too. I think the challenge for us as command staff level is making sure that all our folks are doing that. And I think one of the ways that we have to kind of start looking at it is how we evaluate performance. Because typically we measure performance in a lot of categories, specifically in our agency, there's 20 different criteria that people are measuring. It's kind of hard for our employees to figure out what's most important for us, for them to do. And there's so many measures in which they're evaluating. And I think that we can start by looking at how we evaluate our officers so that they understand what the expectation is from us to them to be able to do their job. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have. You know, we're looking at our evaluation process in terms of what is it we expect of our men and women, what do we value, what do we want them to do. And I think that we are able as the command level to be able to clearly define those expectations to our folks. I think we're more successful. Right? I think community policing has been around for a long, long time. Training's been around for a long, long time. But it's just trying to get people to continuously practice that day in and day out is the challenge that we face. And just trying to get our supervisors to impart that to the line level too. Because community doesn't really care about us to the extent that they are dealing with the officers out there in the field. It's those contacts that have the greatest value, not us that occasionally come to this meeting, but it's the day-to-day contact. So trying to get our officers to understand that, to practice that, is the challenge. And I think having a performance evaluation that really highlights and focuses on that is something that we need to look at and trying to get towards.
For me, the community-oriented policing part of this is it's truly at the core of the Irvine Police Department. As a new officer, I was embraced with this philosophy, and as I've promoted every rank, it continues throughout the whole organization. So it's something it's a culture that's in our organization. So I can see it's easy for me to embrace community-oriented policing, and particularly at our agency, because it's been a part of us for so long. Where from an agency that hasn't, I can see it being much difficult to implement it. Talking about geographic policing and the resistance that some chiefs are going to get when they try to implement this. But I do believe in the end, it is very helpful for the police department and the community when you do break the city up into geographic areas so people do have ownership. And something I think our former chief has done over the years is he's hired, and I hate to say this, but nice people, and that are professional, educated, and he's made them great police officers, and that are a reflection of the community. And I can remember, it was almost 13 years ago when he started talking about this, he took some criticism for that, but in the end, it has been very helpful for our agency, and they're very educated individuals that are very open to change and doing things different, and they're great people to work with. And the officers that we have, I'm inspired by some of the acts of not just courage, but compassion that they really embrace with just how they do their everyday job. And it's just a couple of examples of that. We have a Shop with the Cop program that we started a few years ago, where we deal with one of our shelters for abused women and their children out there. So a lot of times the last encounter that a lot of these women or family or children had was, say, their dad getting arrested for domestic violence. And so what we've tried to do over the year and work with a nonprofit is during at Christmas time is we work with these groups. The kids come together, the officers have an opportunity to actually go shopping with the children, and we partner with different groups to help fund that, and the officers are quite honestly paying for it out of their own pockets. But it's been a wonderful experience, and I quite honestly, it's just very inspiring to work with these kids, that it's the best thing that's ever happened to them and the interaction that they have with the officer. And that's just one example of the partnership that we have.
I agree. I think the Sheriff's Department does a great job with this community-oriented policing. And it's the department's role to facilitate the communication between the community and our line staff. And doing programs such as we do our Coffee with the Cop. And the line staff love that. They love having a positive interaction with the general public in a safe setting where they can get to know each other. They also our department does a great job opening that line of communication between the community and our officers or deputies in the form of, we simplified, made it real easy, and upgraded our accommodation and complaint system recently. And what we saw with that was for every one complaint we had against one of our deputies, we had 7 positive accommodations. And it's good to facilitate that and get that back to our deputies so that they see that they're doing a good job, because believe it or not, they enjoy feedback.
They got one more question. Before they go to the one more question, I'd like to say that what I've heard is so impressive, I can't believe it. What I ended up doing, and I think it was Chief Solano I told about this 2 years ago, is in my city, I followed Irvine's model because I liked it. And I separated the city into geographical beat areas. I assigned officers to make contacts with all the businesses and all the residents. And some of you could just imagine the reception I got from my officers when I wanted them to do that, because, yeah, you're right, they shook their head. What ended up happening, and I heard it today, is you evaluate the performance. The way you evaluate the performance is we had a sheet. Business contacts, neighborhood contacts, gym contacts, school contacts, and what it ended up doing is I took all of those contacts where they were, evaluated, and in each of those surveys, the citizens said, name the top 3 problems in your neighborhood. And this is what I got from the businesses and what I got from the homes. What ended up occurring is we knew how to focus our enforcement, because here was traffic in this geographical area. In this area, it was burglaries. In this area, it was gangs. So the benefit of what was just said, and Commander Mahoney said it best, and all of you see that. So it's really beneficial to do this, and I think it's important. And fortunately in California, we mostly do it anyway. You know, I hate to say that, but we really do. We lean forward, so.
This has been a presentation of the School of Criminal Justice and Law Enforcement at California Southern University.